today, I would like to pay respect to our community through acknowledgement of country. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Gadigal people, who are the traditional custodians of the land from which we are hosting today's webinar, and also acknowledge the traditional custodians of all the lands across Australia from which we have people dialing in from today. I would like to pay respects to elders past, present and emerging, and acknowledge and pay respect to any Aboriginal people here present today. For those that I haven't met, my name is Simon Barnier, VP of Asia Pacific and the Japan region. As we kick off today's APAC event for 2023, and with 3 more events planned this year, including face-to-face sessions across the country, since we have last met, the momentum of Reveal across APAC and globally exceeds market expectations. Today's community event is focused on the APAC specific achievements and hearing from your peers across the region. Some of the highlights over the last 12 months have been, firstly, law firms, corporates, service providers and advisories across Australia, New Zealand and the Asian market have come on board with Reveal. And it is exciting to see new use cases expanding from your traditional eDiscovery and litigation. To name a few: privacy breaches, governance and compliance, data breaches, and PII identification. Shortly, you will hear from your peers, Campbell McKenzie, who leads Incident Response Solutions New Zealand, where he will share his journey with Reveal. Secondly, the Australian and APAC functionality requirements have been at the forefront of our priorities over the last 12 months. And for those on the journey with Reveal would agree the significant amount of innovation and improvements we have made. Though there is definitely more to come, and with development resources dedicated to this region, we are not slowing down. Today, you'll hear from Enzo Lasciotto, who will take you through several differentiators on how Reveal 11 delivers to your requirements for large eDiscovery and litigation matters. And this has been one of the core development areas that we have wanted to improve over the last 6 months. Thirdly, and not being biased, our innovation through acquisitions, integration and internal development, I believe leads the market at this time. Over the last few months, through our acquisitions and integrations, we have now extended our capabilities into a single pane of glass through the entire life cycle, legal hold and preservations, collections, and most importantly, delivering to workflow automation. Our final presentation of the day, you'll hear from Alex Chatsidimatis, product owner and ex-CTO of Legal, which has been our recent acquisition, who will take you through our innovation journey, what's planned, what the future looks like, and a sneak peek into the Reveal Central. And finally, on our achievements over the last 12 months, our Reveal Academy certifications across this region alone continues to grow, with now over 300 individuals holding certifications. More on this later. Joining me today for the Reveal in APAC series is Campbell McKenzie, Director, Forensic and Cyber, and Head of Incident Response Solutions New Zealand. Campbell kicked off Incident Response Solutions over 4.5 years ago with the mission to provide specialty forensic, cybersecurity, and crisis management expertise. Prior to this, Campbell's expertise extended to global advisories and New Zealand Police. Welcome, Campbell. Enzo Lasciotto, as many of you know or have worked with Enzo is our Director of Customer Success across APAC, and prior to Reveal, led the eDiscovery APAC business for Nuix and worked with law firms across Australia and the UK. And finally, Alex Chatsidimatis, product owner for the new acquisitions for Reveal. As mentioned, Alex joined us from Legal, where he was their CTO and has also held 5 years experience in law enforcement. Welcome to Alex. But today, shortly, I'll hand over to Campbell, and Campbell will take us through not only his insights into the rise in data privacy, but more importantly, the completed work thus far with Reveal and how this delivers to his go-to-market opportunities. Secondly, we will hear from Enzo, who will take us through the core differentiators in the new version of Reveal 11, specifically focused on eDiscovery and litigation. And then finally, Alex will take us through a sneak peek into Reveal Central and what the future looks like with the recent acquisitions that we've made. So before passing over to Campbell, and I would have shown this slide over the recent Reveal in APAC series last year, you would have noticed a major change in this slide, and that is with the acquisitions that we've made that have now allowed us to go into the areas of legal hold, preservation, collection, but more importantly, workflow automation. And excitingly now is kind of building out that full end-to-end life cycle across eDiscovery, litigation, investigation, and a lot more other use cases. So without further ado, welcome to Campbell, and thank you for joining our Reveal in APAC series. Over to you, Campbell.
Thank you, Simon, and thanks, Simon and the team at Reveal for this opportunity to come along and talk to the group today. It's certainly a privilege, and I look forward to sharing how Incident Response Solutions has onboarded Reveal and what we're doing to help our clients. So Simon's giving you a brief overview there about the firm. Essentially, I've been working in forensics for just over 20 years now, and around about 5 years ago, I saw an opening in the market to do mainly cyber incident response forensic work with the increase in ransomware, business email compromise. So that was what we kicked off offering in the business 4.5 years ago. Over time, though, what we've seen is an increase in mainly law firms that we're working with having to respond to regulatory requirements with the new Privacy Act in New Zealand, which I'll talk about shortly, and indeed in general discovery and litigation matters. So I'll talk about the journey we're going on there. And primarily the need to be able to use better review tools to be able to expedite the review and make it more efficient and keep costs down for customers. And then I'm going to give you a little bit of a demo at the end, not a live demo, but a PowerPoint demo of how we're actually using the tool. Thanks, Simon. So firstly, I've got 3 screenshots here of what our business does. Over on the left-hand side is primarily what we've been aiming at, which is the incident response side of the work. So that's the cyber focus. There's lots of good information there that our clients jump on board and have a look at the resources. It includes preparing for, responding to, and recovering from cyber incidents. So today I join you from Christchurch in the South Island. Yesterday, as a business, we were out helping a large organization down here run a cyber simulation. So that was a 4-hour workshop where we had prepared a bunch of scenarios, and we took that business through how would you actually respond to a cyber incident. So that's packaged into our incident response website. We've got the forensic tech website as well. That's more focused on the solutions we use. And of course, we have to use a bunch of different tools, Reveal being one of them. And right down the bottom hand corner is something that we sort of like to give back to the market, which is our whistleblowing service. So it was my father that got me first into doing this type of work I do every day. And I'm fortunate to be joined by my father in this business, and we operate a whistleblowing service as well. In New Zealand, you have the new act as well, the Protected Disclosures Act. There's high requirements around privacy there, and we've got Privacy Week coming up in New Zealand as well. So there's a lot of interest in these areas, and it's certainly growing. Thanks, Simon. I just talked about growing. Here's some stats. Always good to start off with statistics. This chart here comes from the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report. It's now around about its 15th year, and each year they have around about 20,000 organizations respond to the survey. There's a lot of useful charts that you can jump online and have a look at, but this one here sort of resonates with me the most. It's your 3 pillars of cyber, which is confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And you can see over time there, the increasing concerns and the increasing incidents from organizations about when they have a cyber breach, what impacts them. The blue line, confidentiality, has remained the highest. So it's fair to say people are concerned about keeping their data confidential. The integrity of the data as well. So attackers are coming more and more into organizations and changing data. So ransomware attacks, locking up the files. And finally, availability. Availability is when you have like a distributed denial of service attack, where they basically block access to your website, and indeed server ransomware attack. So as you can see, pretty big issue going on there. Yep, and the next slide there, thanks, Simon. What this slide here is a screenshot from the New Zealand Office of the Privacy Commissioner. In December 2020, the new Privacy Act was enacted, and you can see there a big sharp jump in the number of privacy breaches that were reported them by any New Zealand organisation or agency. There are mandatory reporting requirements, which requires organisations to notify the Privacy Commissioner. There's some other interesting statistics as well, which sort of breaks down those that are reported within the required time period, which is 72 hours. I think the statistics, which will be shortly due out in 2023, is just going to show the same sort of picture. In general, privacy breaches are on the up. Thanks, Simon. So what's required of an organisation? Essentially, they do need to respond from a privacy point of view if there's any potential serious harm, including identity theft, financial loss, loss of a business or employment opportunity, or a significant humiliation or loss of dignity. So that's quite a wide-reaching range of categories of serious harm. What I typically find is if you've had a privacy breach, you're typically going to fall into one of those categories. Step 3 of the recommendations from the OPC is that you need to be transparent and notify them. Of course, in order to do that, you have to understand the nature of the breach, which is, of course, where forensics and security kicks in. And everyone wants information as quickly as possible because it quickly becomes a public relations issue. So what I have seen over the last few years is an increasing demand from those that we work for, being mainly law firms, to get that information turned around quickly. What's the data we're collecting, and how quickly can we give our clients the results? If we can go to the next slide, thanks, Simon. But it's not only privacy breaches that we deal with, we also deal with eDiscovery matters, for example. Here I've just taken a snapshot from the High Court rules here in New Zealand that were last updated in 2016. And you can see the courts have long recognised now, for well over a decade, the need to use better technology to ensure that eDiscovery reviews are proportionate and efficient. So they recommend appropriate keyword searches, which of course we all know well and use. Also other automated searches and techniques for culling documents, including prioritization technology. I first started using this on jobs around about a decade ago. Great technology to use. The critical thing though is how long it takes to train a model, how long it takes to kick that into action and starting to see the benefits from it. So what I've certainly been doing in our business is exploring the different options to be able to start using that prioritization technology quickly and reliably. And we'll move on, thanks. So where did we come to? We come to today, which is essentially when I first started talking with Reveal around about 9 months ago, and it was a general discussion around the use of their tool, where they are in the roadmap, and where we might be in 2023. So myself and the team jumped online. We did all of the training. We became those certified people. We've got 4 people in our team that have gone through the academy. We started using the test environment that Enzo had set up for us with the Enron data, and basically having a bit of a general look around. What I knew though is what we would have to deliver our client from day one. And I needed to ensure that our eDiscovery process, which is of course based on the electronic discovery reference model, that any other tool that we brought into the mix would fit in nicely, because we've done a lot of work around automation, scripting, and general procedure. So with all that testing, I was comfortable that we'll be able to make it work. And so what I did is I launched the document analysis review tool, DART, which is essentially a combination of all of the various forensic tools that we use. So starting from collection of laptops, and mobiles, and cloud data, and the software that we subscribe to do those collections, through to the back-end tools that we do use to do our early case assessment and processing, and then uploading to our review tools as well, all backed by a team of forensic experts. And today I'm going to be showing you how we're using Reveal to do that work. So, having been impressed by the various AI models that was being presented to me on bullying, harassment, and so on and so forth, what I was told is that we can develop our own models and we can train those up. So I thought, well, what is probably going to be the most common one that we're going to be putting into use? Is it going to be employment? Is it going to be fraud? But I thought to myself, we're working on a ton of privacy breaches at the moment. So why don't we take all of the work that we're doing around privacy breaches and put that into Reveal? What I wanted to do though is I wanted to make it as thorough as possible. So I started from the starting point, which is the Department of Internal Affairs, who issues all of New Zealand's evidence of identity type documents. And what they did is about 2 years ago, they updated the website, and they did another update last year to cover 30 different artifact types. So what I did, I've got an example on the next slide of one, is we went to each of those 30 artifact types, such as birth certificate, and we extracted out all of the information about what would be in a typical New Zealand birth certificate. And then they define all the various other keywords and so on and so forth. So you can imagine this is where you might be using some regex expressions and the like. And for each of those 30, we developed anywhere between sort of 5. Some of the evidence types don't have a lot of information on them, such as an IRD number, or through to like 100 different keywords. And we've looked at the words that are in English, we've looked at the words that are in Te Reo Māori in New Zealand here, and we've built up long lists of those. So I've got an example of the next slide, just a short screenshot of one of them. And this did take quite a lot of time to pull this all out and test it. So you can see there I've got just some basic coding, EI for evidence of identity. This is artifact type number 9, and I've got keyword 1 to 20 by way of example. And these are just some random sorted keywords. There's no particular ordering behind them there. But obviously New Zealand birth certificate, down below we've got all birth certificate. So one thing, for example, as you go through the processes, these keywords here as they are will search on the content, but if you want to search the metadata as well, you need the delimiter of all and then birth certificate. So there's about 100 keywords under birth certificate, and then we've ingested those all into the back end of Reveal as part of the automation process, that when we enable any new case, it automatically sets up work folders, search requests, and it will apply and run the keyword. So over on the right-hand side there, you can just see a quick snapshot of some of those hits in a test case across each of those different keywords there. Diving a little bit deeper in the next slide, we've got some Australian examples. I know we've got a large portion of people from Australia here today, so we went and had a look at some examples. I was interested to see the yellow bar up the top, a warning about the Latitude financial breach. So I know in New Zealand, 20% of our population has had PII data compromised from the Latitude financial services data breach. So there's more information if you click on that link there, but similar to New Zealand, there's a certain format for Australian driver's licenses. We've stripped out those same keywords for passports and driver's licenses, both for New Zealand, Australia, and globally, and put them all into different keyword lists. So on the right-hand side, you can see it's evidence identity type 36 for us here, and we've just got some samples. Thanks, Simon. Over on the left-hand side is an example of those keywords that have been transposed, run in Reveal, and we've got the keyword HR62, and that's run, and it presents the screenshot in the middle being the original birth certificate. That is a birth certificate that's provided by way of specimen example from the New Zealand government website. It's not actually a birth certificate. And then we've OCR'd it, obviously, and over on the right-hand side, the OCRing is working very, very nicely. And you can see all of the highlight hits that's again set up in the back end of Reveal are showing there to the reviewer. And you can see the individual words, but you can also see the entire phrase. So the one around about third from the bottom, Ngoa Tapa, starting that, that is the full keyword hit for that particular keyword. So what we've found is when you strip out 100 keywords for a passport, some of them will have obviously a lot of false positives. Some of them won't necessarily find it because of the OCRing and the regex expressions, but there'll be certain keywords that come up time and time again that are kind of the gems. And when we start a review of someone, that's what we'll typically be focusing on. those keywords that we know are most likely to be an actual passport or driver's license. What we find is the false positives are typically documents where people are asking for copies of passports, not the actual passport itself. Thanks, Simon.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Yep.
So the model library, setting all that up was critical to us to do before we launched our Dart tool. And if anyone who's looked at the model library, you'll see everything starting from advertisements and promotions, which is on the bottom line, second one along there. Those are all the pre-trained models that Reveal provide you with. The ones up the top are all the ones that we've been developing. We've developed 6 of them. 3 of them we haven't done yet: mergers, acquisitions, insolvency, and tax inquiries. That will come when demand arises, but for all of the rest of them, we've gone out in the same way that we've done privacy. We've got all the different artifacts, we've built up all the different keyword searches. So for example, for health and safety, we've got many hundreds of keywords that define all the different type of workplace incidents that any given investigator might be interested in looking at. So if we had a health and safety case, we could just ingest the data, run our keywords, and then apply the model. But we're going to look at the privacy model.
Cool. Just a few more minutes, about 3-4 more minutes, Campbell. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool.
So the first one here is basically the starting point. This is a pre-trained model, version 1.1, dealing with privacy. This is applied across some test data, and you can see the distribution is mostly non-responsive documents and very few actual responsive documents on the right. What we show on the next slide is actually when we've gone and presented the review with the keywords and tagged them as responsive. You'll see it move around based on most likely to be responsive. And that's all the items in the 100% range. And you can see there's a lot of blue, positive, all the way across the range there. But that is a version 1.1 model. Now, the whole idea is that as we work through each case, the model will continue to get better and better and better. What we've got here is we've got a second case, case number 2, different set of documents. We've got around about 30,000 documents in this set. That is based on what the AI training model believes where the documents will be. And then if we look at the next slide, once we've actually run those keywords and the reviewers have reviewed around about 6,000 of the documents, you can see the model nicely pushing up to the left and to the right from non-responsive through to responsive. And essentially what we would then do, once they're finished doing the keyword search, we would then push them, as we see on the next slide. Actually, the one after, thanks, Simon.
Yep.
Into over on the top right-hand side there, we would allocate, okay, what do you want to look at? Most responsive documents. What percentage do you want to look at? So the 65th percentile up to the 100th percentile, or the 90th up to the 100th percentile. So we'll either give them the documents that are most likely to be responsive, or we can go into the Reveal AI-driven batches, which will give them, again, a range, or we can give them a control set, which will obviously take samples from right across the board. The key thing being the yield curve on the right-hand side there. We worked on some large cases over the Christmas break where we've had to send the information to the commissioner for their review. We've worked with them to show that we have used predictive coding, using specialist knowledge, specialist tools, and we've reviewed around about 20% of the entire data set. As we've reviewed it, we're getting diminishing returns, and we've discussed how much further do we need to go. And there is now more and more acceptance from both the courts in New Zealand and from the regulators that by using these tools, we can look at around about 20% of the data set. I mean, that's not a magic number, but that's certainly a number that we aim for. So if we look at the final slide and talk about where we're going with this and what we're finding for our clients, how does Reveal help us as part of our overall tool suite? It helps kickstart the review. We're doing the early case assessment. We've structured all the keywords to run automatically, and we're using the supervised learning portion of Reveal to do that. There's obviously other functionality such as non-supervised, the analytics, that's helpful as well. We're using TAR, continuous active learning, AI models, whatever you want to talk about it, we're using that technology. We're also finding we're removing the double handling of data by bringing the data in, processing it in the back office, putting it in our review tool, and then handing it on to a law firm and they're putting it in their review tool. We essentially load it all up and then the user gets the log on, turn the key, away they go. This reduces overall review time. It's being accepted by courts and regulators, and also it improves that time to go back and notify customers of the breach, which of course helps with the overall public relations following a privacy breach. So that's a summary of how we use Reveal. Again, I'd like to thank the team for all their support in getting us up and running. I'm happy to take any questions offline in regards to our usage of it. Thank you, Simon, and I'm handing over to Enzo.
Yeah, and just to kind of wrap up, a big thank you, kind of Campbell, for kind of sharing your journey. I know it's kind of, as you say, you're in kind of early days, but the amount of work you've done is great, right? In terms of not just yourself, but also with the team. And echoing Campbell's thoughts, if there's any questions you'd like to discuss with Campbell, kind of either put them in the chat or send them through to either myself or Campbell after the session. I'm happy to kind of intro Campbell as well if you're kind of interested to talk about kind of his experiences and where he's going. I'm sure, as Campbell said, he's more than happy to kind of take a call on kind of share more about his experiences. So thanks again, Campbell, for job well done and the journey ahead.
Thank you.
Alrighty, so I want to then now hand over to Enzo, where we wanted to take you through the latest with Reveal 11, and specifically what I wanted to focus on is from an eDiscovery and a litigation perspective, and especially big matters across your eDiscovery and litigation jobs. And this has been one major area from a development side that both Enzo, Brian and I have been pushing within the Australian market and also within the development work that we've been doing. And there's 5 areas that I've asked Enzo to kind of put something together and touch on. And the 5 areas is he'll go through the dashboard as it would relate to you from an eDiscovery and litigation perspective. Look at what we've built around the Reveal query language, from kind of searching, creating reports, showcasing that output, then taking you into building the assignments, checking in and out, looking at the heat map, which is a new functionality that has just come out within the last couple of months, last month or two. And then finally looking at the AI models, classifier, being able to publish and reuse those for yourself as it specifically relates to eDiscovery and litigation. And more importantly, what we're going to show you today is the improvements that we've made since our last user group, which was in December. So you're actually seeing the amount of innovation and development that we've been doing since that last session that we did from the demonstration. So without further ado, Enzo, thanks for joining, and I'll stop sharing, and then you can run your demonstration. Thanks.
Excellent. Can you see my screen?
Sure can. You're good to go.
All right, perfect. Let me just move this out of the way. All right. Thanks everyone for joining. What I'm going to take you through is the updated version of R11. And what I'm presenting to you at the moment is our dashboard, which has transcended through the different iterations that we've had through R11. One of the focal points that we want to also make reference is when data's loaded, either through our processing engine or through a load file, being able to select a specific date and know that that date is going to resonate every time you launch into your dashboard. The other options that have been brought in is obviously we've got our predictive scoring. We've also brought in the top sender and recipients at an individual level, but also at a domain level. In addition, our emotional intelligence, which is around our sentiment analysis. Previously, we've had negative and positive, but based on the development work that's been facilitated, we've also brought in these other emotional intelligence and sentiment analysis that was derived based on our standalone AI product. So again, we've brought this in. One thing to note is some of the enhancements that we've brought into the dashboard. If I was to select the positive sentiment, you see on the right-hand side, I've got my list view. What we've also developed and incorporated is not only list view, I've got my grid view access here that allows me to look at all the documents in a document list, but we've also brought that function and feature directly into here as well. So when you're utilizing any of these analytics around clustering and the heat map, knowing that you can actually go into the clustering, knowing that this grid view is also resonates and continues on through your different aspects. And I'll just touch on these other portions as I proceed. But one of the other options that I wanted to showcase is our searching capability. So we
But before we go
Yep.
into that, Enzo, I just want to touch on the dashboard. What Enzo's showing you, even with the timeline, Enzo, if you can even look at the timeline, some dates, and the same thing, you can see that stuff come up on the grid in kind of real time. That has come about from feedback from specifically this region on making it easy for you to kind of navigate those large litigation and eDiscovery matters. So kind of, again, appreciate kind of all the involvement and kind of feedback we've been getting, but what Enzo's showing you here is really from a direct impact from the feedback we're getting from the market. Enzo, keep going.
Perfect. One thing that I wanted to also showcase is our searching capability. As Simon alluded to, we've developed our own RQL, which is Reveal Query Language. What that allows us to do, yes, I'm able to, copy and paste some searches directly in here. But what we're also able to do now is, and again, coming from my law firm experience, there's been multiple cases where the legal team or the client has presented like 20 different search terms. And what they say is the search term 1 to 5 is in one date range scope. Search 6 to 10 is in a different date range scope, so on and so on. So what I would normally have to have done is define the date range scope initially, run the search, and then add the results into a folder.
Enzo, can you do me a favor? Can you unshare your screen and reshare it? It's a black screen for some attendees.
Oh, okay.
I see it okay, but just reshare your screen.
Yep. How does that?
John, could we get the the audience just to confirm if it's okay now?
All good now. Please continue.
All good now.
Thank
okay,
you.
keep going.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thanks. So as you can see, I've just added some of these search terms. And as I alluded to before, where you've got multiple search terms in a different date range, now you're able to utilize a singular search against the specific date range. But given our query language and given that the backend component is Elasticsearch, where you're now able to search on any metadata or work product values in addition to your search terms as well, as you can see here. One thing I will do is I'll go into my table view. Clicking on my table view, I can simply click on this. It's then going to identify the number of records. Clicking on the total then gives me the ability to associate and have a look at the number of documents that are going to be returned. If there's any search terms that resonates and yields a high number of documents, you may want to go into that criteria and then hone in on what you're wanting to define as part of your scope. One of the options that we do have in addition to here is click on Save as Report. So if I click on Save as Report, and in this one here, I'm just going to call it APAC. One of those options here is if I click on, I'm going to open up my the ability to actually run this as a hit report. I click on Save, goes into my word list. So I've got my highlights where you actually highlight the associated either responsive or any terms that you want to be persistently highlighted in the document. What I want to go to is my hit report. So as you can see, I've already created a hit report against my responsive terms. This is the hit report that I've just created. I'm just going to focus on this one here, these four items. So when I click on edit, I got my associated search terms in here. But what you can actually do is define how you want that data to be outputted, either to the review team or to the eDiscovery team. And what you can actually do is create a work folder for each one of your search terms. So in here, I've got a work folder here that I've created. You can create a saved search for each one of your terms, which I've defined in here. On the fly, I've populated a field called APAC series event with a date. And I'm actually adding the relevant hit terms into that field directly on the fly as I'm presenting. And what I'm also doing here is populating the root folder of those documents. So if I was to actually facilitate that action through here, and I'll just show you how quick it is to actually do it. So in here, I'm just going to create a folder here. I'm just going to call it APAC. I'm going to associate which team has access either at a team level or at an individual level who can actually view it. So I've got my folder there. I'm now going to create my search folder. And in here, similar to what I've done previously, I'm going to associate which team has the visibility to actually view those saved searches. I'm going to create a field on the fly. Just call it APAC. I'm going to associate it to a field value. I'm going to make it visible. And lastly, I'm going to populate the root folder. And clicking on that, clicking on edit. So you can see just setting that up. It took me like, less than a minute to set it up. And to run it, what it's doing now, it's going through, it's running all these searches. And as it's running the searches, it's now on the fly populating the folder, populating each folder in a working folder set of each one of those search terms. It's also populating a folder for each one of the search. So you can see how long it took just to run those 12. Now that it ran those 12, I can go into here, click on view results. It's going to give me a list of all my search terms. I do now have the ability to export this out as an Excel file and then present that to my legal team or present that to the client. Also note the number of documents, documents with a family, uniqueness. So uniqueness is the search term of gas is represented 4,200 times, but it doesn't, those 4,200 items don't contain any of these other search parameters. And the inclusiveness means that this search is represented 27% of the full population of the data that's been loaded in the platform.
Sensational, Enzo. Just a couple. Thank you for that. Just a couple of, and then that's been a major kind of a benefit, right? Especially kind of sharing with a lot of law firms. 2 questions that came in. Brian, I saw you answered one. Was that correct? Around the master date, Brian?
Yeah, I've answered that in the answered forum.
Yep. Okay, great. And then there's another question, Brian or Enzo, if you'd like to kind of answer, or if it's a larger question we can do via typing. How would you set up a TAR workflow using Reveal? And how would you calibrate and validate the accuracy of the algorithm behind the predictive coding? I'm not sure if that's a short answer, Enzo or Brian, or if you want a sort of detailed response in, Brian, while Enzo's talking, or Enzo?
I was going to say, I was going to touch on that when I go through AI modeling.
Okay,
but
cool.
Again,
So,
I'll just touch on it, but it is.
Well, no, do it with the AI. No, do it with the AI modeling, because I know that you've got there's quite a bit for you to cover.
Yeah. All right. So let's say that already facilitated that action. I'm just going to just refresh the screen for a second. While the screen refreshes,
and about 10 minutes, Enzo. Just time check. Yep. On your piece.
Yep. Now that I just refresh the screen, I didn't really have to refresh it. All I really need to do is just refresh the foldering. But one thing to note is being able to create these hit report on the fly through the front end while that loads. Also note that with the persistent highlighting, being able to identify which team has the visibility to view that persistent highlighting. And again, just so by simply clicking on that, and associating, and also having the different array of colors that's also defined. Let's go. 1 second. And while that's doing that, one thing I also want to note is, which I'm going to take you through the front end, is this auto assignment. So I know someone made reference about TAR, how you facilitate a TAR. Through the front end, you have the ability to create these auto assignments. And what I mean by auto assignments, when the review's taken shape and the review team are coding the documents for responsiveness or privilege or confidentiality, their actions will then dictate how the content of that items is then being scored against the AI model. And based on that score against the AI model, if I go, I'm just going to go into here, go in the work product, you can see here, this is the folder that I've created. I'm just going to expand that for a second. And if I go down the bottom here, you can see that all the different folders. So again, on the fly, it took less than a minute to create all these folders on the fly. So again, not only these work folders, if I go into my saved search, click on my saved search, again, I'm presented with the associated saved search parameters as well. Not only that, if I click on this value here, go to my grid view, on the far right-hand side, it's then going to populate in here the associated hit that was associated to that document. You can see how quick and easy it was to facilitate that. Going through creating AI batches, creating batches to be used by the review team. What I can do is, if I go into my advanced search, and again, documents have already been coded. So if I go into my AI models, I know that documents already been coded, and you can see the number of AI models that I've got. what I'm going to do is I'm going to detail and say, I'm going to bring back documents that have a 70% and higher. Yep. So 70% and higher, 711 records. In here, I'm going to say, bring up my tags, my responsive tags, select all of them. And I'm going to say, bring back only those documents that haven't been reviewed. Yeah, so I've got my search. So here is where I've got my search of documents where the AI modeling has predicted between to be 70 and higher. Yep. So what I'm going to do now with that, I'm going to create that as a saved search. In my assignments, I'm going to go for assignments. Yeah. So what I'm actually detailing here is I'm going to actually create an assignment based on these 677 records. And when I speak to clients, it's not about looking at every single document in your population. It's about using analytics and AI and CAL and PC to prioritize what you need to look at. Not only prioritize what you need to look at, but also use it as a quality control assurance that the documents that are being reviewed in a way that is accurate to the type of litigation or eDiscovery project. Being able to batch those documents out, clicking on assign, what the new feature that is now available is this save search. So in this save search, I can go in, I can select my save search. So for assignments, for example, I can say, how often do I want to run this save search? So previously, this auto batching automation was built in the project admin in a different screen. So we actually brought this in the forefront. So I can say, look, I want to run this every 3 hours. The minimum, so as long as 50 documents meet the criteria, it's going to automatically run that sequence against those documents. I'm then going to associate to a folder. Again, I've already got some folders that are already batched out. So I'm going to use a first level review, minimum of, let's say 50 documents. I want to make sure that I want to keep the full families together. So the parent and child relationship. I'm then going to associate it to a pool. So the difference between a pool and a team and users, if I associate it to user and I then add Brian's going to get all the batches. If I associate it to a pool and there's 5 people in the pool, it's automatically going to evenly distribute the number of batches that's going to create to those users, and those users are going to be able to access those batches or assignments. Pool gives the users or that team the ability to go into the pool and actually draw down those batches, check in and check out those batches. So I'm going to facilitate that. I'm going to use that as a sorting order. So the master date and the document ID to make sure the documents are sorted in chronological order. I'm going to associate it to a coding panel. And in this scenario, I'm just going to do today's date, click on run. Yep. Just click on OK, continue. And what it's going to do now, it's now going to create the batches on the fly. And when it creates the batches on the fly, if I just go into this tab here and go to my jobs, under assignments, you can see that batch. So it's actually created 10 batches. Yep. Now that those batches have been created, I can now go into my assignments. If I go to the end, I can see that these are the batches that I've created. So I've actually continued on with those batches. So hang on. So I can just select, let's say in this scenario, I'm going to select this batch here, check the batch out. Now it's actually checked out to myself. The batch is then visible. I can now start my review. Upon my review being completed, and again, all the documents are being coded based on a specific coding criteria, I can simply go into my batch, click on, say if I click on user, there we go. Click on that, 1 second. Let's disregard that. Click on, where's that badge? Batch was created, I'm pretty sure. Oh, well. That's, all right. If I was to click on that batch, you then check the batch in. So again, quick scenario. Yep.
Enzo, just mindful, we've got 5 minutes before handing over to Alex. Do you want to go through just the heat map and the AI models just for 5 minutes, please? Yep.
So heat map. This is a new function and feature. So heat map then provides a visibility of utilizing any work product. So in here, I can stipulate either metadata or work product field, either as a X or Y axis. So in this scenario here, I'm going to click on my search terms. I'm going to associate the search terms that I've run. In the column, I've identified the custodians, click on submit. It now presents the relevant search hits against the custodians. So again, I can actually use this as a filtering tool. For example, clicking on search, bringing back those documents that are responsive to that search. Clicking back those documents that are responsive to the search to then do some further analysis. Doing the AI modeling, one thing to note is when I click on my supervised learning, these are the current AI models that I've created on the fly based on tags. These are the current models that are available to all clients. Note that I've actually created one to be reused for new projects. The ease and speed to create a new AI model or classifier. 1 second, I'm just going to go into this option here. Going to go into my project admin, click on tags. The speed to create an AI classifier. Multi-select, I'm going to call it AI APAC. Yep. I'm going to just create both a negative and a positive. And for the review, simply by enabling this as a positive and negative and click on add, I'll now created this as a classifier. Creating this as a classifier, and let's say APAC, I'm just going to add it into my coding panel there. Creating it as a classifier, if I go into my supervised learning, you see down the bottom here, this is the classifier that I've just created. Clicking on the cogwheel, I can then associate any one of my default models. Not only the default models, I've also created a model, I've also published a model that I can actually reuse. So if I go into here, I've got all these models that are available at the bottom here. If there's a model that I've previously used, I can then add this to my model. I can then simply click on save, run full process. It's going to use that work product that I've previously facilitated on a previous project and then bring back those documents that automatically is identified against that model. If I go back into my classifier and I'm going to look at review designation, this is where that the discussion around the cow. I've already coded some of these documents. Yep. So 43 positive, 22 negative. So you can see how the AI model has identified documents. So based on the different scoring rate. If we look at the control set here, and again, if there was a control set, so this gives you the identifies the ability to, when you're doing your cow, to associate the number of documents based on your precision, your recall, your F1, both your richness at labeled and model. This gives you the ability to define at what point is going to be your cutoff point. And through that as well, when you've got multiple iterations, it allows you to go through the different iterations to define how you're progressively training that model against that project. So again, being able to look at different features, model features. So these are based on the models. These are the features that is being identified and how these weights are being scored. And again, you can also have the ability to download this as a CSV file. Lastly, if I go back into my dashboard, you've got all these models. This is all these models. So we have got a model around issues. This is where a user has gone through and coded the documents accordingly. And based on the documents accordingly, if the number of documents that have been coded, it's identified 190 documents that have scored between 66 and 100. So using this predictive scoring gives the users or the administrators the ability to then prioritize what needs to be reviewed. And again, as I alluded to previously, it's not about reviewing every single document in your data set. It's about using these toolkit, this AI and analytical toolkit to prioritize what you need to look at, but also use it as a quality control and quality assurance that you're actually meeting your defined review criteria. And I'll just pause there in case anyone's got any comments or questions.
No, I think that's good, Enzo, because I do want to hand to Alex just for our last session, if you're done, Enzo.
Perfect.
Excellent. Big thanks, Enzo, for kind of taking us through. As I touched on, I really wanted Enzo to focus on that eDiscovery litigation area, and also specifically kind of the changes since our kind of our last user group So anybody that wants to kind of get deeper dive into any of the sessions, I know that we do a lot, feel free to kind of reach out. Now, as kind of, I'm honoured, as I said earlier, to have Alex as part of kind of the Reveal team globally. As I touched on earlier, Alex was the ex-CTO from Legal, L-I-G-L, that is, our recent acquisition. And Alex is going to take us through our recent acquisitions, the innovation journey, kind of what it means for the community, kind of where we're taking it, and also giving you a kind of a sneak peek into Reveal Central, which is going to be our single pane of glass. So welcome to Reveal, Alex, and over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Simon. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here and present to everyone in the APAC region. All right, so for those of you who are familiar with the history of acquisitions at Reveal, of course you'll know Mind's Eye being acquired in 2019, which of course brought the extremely scalable processing capabilities to the platform. In 2020, of course, the acquisition of NextLP. In 21, the acquisition of BrainSpace, and of course, both Campbell and Enzo, highlighted and demonstrated practical real-world use cases of how those technologies can be extremely valuable to not only eDiscovery, but investigations and other use cases. But really, the opportunity that Simon and the team has given me is to come and speak about, really the two most recent acquisitions. And one, of course, last year being Technically Creative, and this year, a couple months ago, with Legal, as Simon mentioned, where I've come from. And to me, just kind of looking at this holistically and being in the industry for quite some time, it's a phenomenal opportunity. Reveal continuing to expand and invest in various technologies to support other areas of the EDRM. And so with Technically Creative, right, having various connectors to social media and collaboration platforms, with Legal, bringing a whole new range of capabilities around legal hold notification, in-place preservations, data collections, and really what's near and dear to my heart is evidence tracking, and all of that being underpinned by automation throughout the life cycle of the EDRM. And so, Simon, if we just sort of move to the next slide here, I want to highlight what the combination of both Technically Creative and Legal not only can do today out of the box for Reveal 11, but also some of the downstream capabilities with some of the sophisticated automation and connectivity that we just talked about. So what we'll look at, because I'm actually planning to demonstrate the software here for everyone, is, first and foremost, you'll see that there's now the capability to have a global view across all of your different Reveal projects. From the moment that you log in, you'll have the ability to sort of look and feel across your projects in a completely new light. That really leads to that transparency across the EDRM that I spoke about, right? The ability to sort of see each stage distinctly, but also kind of in totality, using dashboards, using reports, and various other methods across that EDRM. As I mentioned, what I'll highlight throughout the demo is workflow automation really sort of underpins all of these different components that we'll be looking at. And it's not just automating one or two tasks, but we're really talking about orchestration throughout the process, from the moment a case is created to preservations, collections, pushing data into the processing area of Reveal, and of course, hosting the data in Reveal 11. We've got the connector, obviously, over 40 different data source connectors that are available to do in real time, in-place preservations and collections, which we'll talk briefly about. And what I like to call ARC, right? The ability to resolve a lot of the big pain points that many organizations have with audit, right? The ability to have that chain of custody, unlike ever before. Resiliency with features like monitoring job progress, suspending and resuming various tasks that run throughout the workflow, and consistency, right? Having consistent case-aware workflows that ultimately provide repeatable and defensible results every single time. And so with that, sort of looking into the future, obviously there's going to be some really great opportunities to extend the capabilities of Reveal and start looking at areas in the future, being able to tackle various other use cases for governance, risk, compliance, surveillance, right? A lot of really great opportunity in the future. And so with that, I will go ahead and grab the screen for a couple minutes and highlight some of the really fantastic capabilities that Reveal Central brings to the table. Let's go ahead and share this.
And then, Alex, as you demonstrate Reveal Central, I know we're kind of going into the integration of Reveal 11 at the moment. Maybe you can just comment on kind of how we're kind of bringing it together and kind of what it will look like in the near future too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So just a quick check. Everyone can see the screen here. Is that correct?
Yep, we're good to go.
Awesome. Awesome. So folks, you heard me mention legal, and legal, of course, now coming into the Reveal portfolio and being rebranded as Reveal Central, as Simon just alluded to. And so what we're looking at here is we're actually inside one of our projects, right? And this project happens to be called Project Cherry. One of the couple things I'll point out, you heard me mention workflow automation. And one of the templates that was used for this particular project is this automate to, and you'll see it says automate to Reveal project, essentially meaning that orchestration that I talked about earlier. The moment I begin to start executing tasks like preservations or collections, we can have an automated template that controls all of those different, otherwise, typical manual steps of reaching out to Microsoft 365, doing the preservations, automatically moving potentially to a collection. And then ultimately, as Simon mentioned, and we'll get to here in a moment, being able to then have that integration into Reveal processing and review. So once a case is set up, there's a couple different, methodologies or sort of ways that you can approach the case. But typically, right, you're always going to start with nominating who your custodians are. And so this is an example where once that project has been set, you can define who those custodians are. This can be done a multitude of different ways. We have integrations into Active Directory, into common HR platforms like Workday or SuccessFactors. And you can also add custodians manually if you're not necessarily connected to those enterprise type deployments. Once those custodians have been set, you then define what are the relevant data sources for this case. And you heard me mention earlier the 40 plus connectors that we offer between the technically creative and the legal acquisitions. And so those connectors span common cloud data repositories like Microsoft 365 Exchange, SharePoint, Teams, and OneDrive. Of course, we also support the common Google Vault deployments for mail and chat and Drive, Slack, Dropbox, and Box, as you can see the various options there. And we also support traditional on-premise data sources as well. There's still some organizations out there running on-prem Exchange or SharePoint. If there's data on file shares that you need to manage, there's opportunities to do that within Reveal Central. So some really great ways to tackle both on-prem and cloud data sources, again, within one single pane of glass here. Moving on from there, you have an opportunity to define your date ranges. And this is a really fantastic way to memorialize what are the date ranges that are going to be required, not only for data preservations, but also extending that out to collections. And we've built this to be extremely robust so you can add multiple data sources. And of course, as we know, no case is linear. Over the course of time, date ranges change, things expand, things contract. And so you'll have an opportunity to be flexible, adding multiple date ranges, not having to go back to the well every single time and collecting data. Instead, again, being very prescriptive and targeted and only collecting the data volumes that you need for that particular project.
Alex, if I could ask a question that's coming from a panelist.
Sure.
And then to Alison, Brian's going to answer your question just around the emotional intelligence, but specifically, Alex, a question that's coming around your experience and where it comes into Reveal. Just a question which was, I've seen some truly epic file paths in box sites that make extracting data a headache. Do we have any on how Reveal will handle these, or kind of your experience around box?
Yeah, so because of the way we're targeting the data at sort of through these API connectors, a lot of those sort of path limitations can be sort of avoided. And so the way we approach not only Box, but many of our other data connectors is we first, scope at a custodian level, and then sort of once we've understood what those locations are for those custodians, then of course you have the opportunity to apply the other filters like a date range. And of course, once that data becomes eligible for download, we actually are truncating a lot of the typical paths. And so making it very straightforward to include more shortened or abbreviated file paths for things like the case name and the custodians, et cetera. So I'll actually showcase that in a moment here when we move to data management and talk about how we actually structure those collections.
And we've got about 10 or 11 minutes, Alex, just all up if that's okay. Yep.
Yep, thank you for that. And so moving on, not necessarily as popular in the APAC region as it is in the US, but just to sort of throw out the capability to perform legal hold notifications. This is actually pretty flexible. I've even spoken to some clients in the EMEA region of the world who are looking to leverage this kind of capability for DSARs, right? And basically allowing notifying individuals within an organization when there's a data access request, as an example, or perhaps sending questionnaires to custodians that they might maybe need to answer. So again, lots of flexible, various ways to leverage this, memorializing this across the board, and again, having that single source of truth. As we sort of move on from case management, and we now start looking at the data management capabilities within Reveal Central, this is ultimately what's going to set you up to leverage that automation. And as Simon mentioned earlier, getting data into Reveal faster, more efficient, in a templatized manner, unlike ever before. And so here within data management, we give you the ability to create jobs. And what I mean by that is you now have the flexibility to sort of pick and choose which attributes you want to use to queue up the data that's not only going to get preserved or collected, but ultimately what lands into Reveal processing or review. And so as an example, I can come in here and select all of the custodians in the case. I can get prescriptive and maybe select a few of those custodians. We'll just say Mark as an example. Maybe I want to focus on Exchange or Dropbox data source. I can determine whether I want to leverage the preservation parameters that I set during that hold creation. And then if I have other parameters around date range as an example, or any particular keywords that I want to use to filter that at the time of preservation or collection, I can set those, build my job as you can see here, and then effectively add that to the other jobs that I have that are in a pending state or perhaps in a running state. So ultimately, what will happen is we'll have our jobs lined up. As you can see, these are not initiated. And if I wanted to proceed with these jobs, as an example, Alex's Microsoft 365 Exchange, I can simply select that, click that automate button. And the moment when I do that, multiple things will happen. Our application will reach out to Microsoft 365 and validate that Alex exists and it's a legitimate custodian. That email address can be accessed. There's a valid E3 or E5 license associated with the account, right? 3 sort of manual steps that are very time consuming. And that's just the identification phase. It will then QC that and automatically move to data hold, where you can optionally, through the automated workflow, have the application go out and perform the in-place preservations of this data. Not only doing that, but QCing it, capturing very pertinent statistics like the amount of data that's been locked, the volume of that data, and it doesn't just stop there. Again, we can then continue to collections, where data will automatically be collected and even staged, so downloaded into a particular repository. And so here's an example of that, where the automation has gone out and basically moved that data directly into the Reveal S3 client staging area. You heard me mention evidence tracking before. Virtual barcodes are a very big deal throughout the Reveal Central platform. And you can see here, every single piece of evidence that Reveal Central creates through its automation is tracked individually with its own unique barcode relating to the project, to the custodian, to the data source, and the tranche of data that's being worked on at this point in time. You heard me mention those statistics earlier. Just to scroll to the right, we can see here what's been collected, not only total number of items, but the actual count of data as well. And as we sort of look towards the future state, in the sort of post-acquisition world, if you will, now that legal is part of the Reveal family, of course, we will be supporting what we call process management. And what I'd like to highlight here, and we're actively working on this integration, and over the next few months, we'll be bringing this to market, is the ability to take that collected data and then automatically have it flow into the Reveal platform. So in my example here on the screen, those different data sources by custodian that I preserved and collected, as we can see, let me just scroll to the right, you'll see the flow of data, right? I collected 55 documents for this particular custodian. It expanded to 111 when it was processed. After the dedupe, we had 77 remaining items. And then ultimately we hosted, right? Or essentially exported and imported 77 documents into Reveal. When we talk about that virtual barcoding again, I'll mention we not only have that barcode for the data we exported, but the resulting 77 documents. We have a unique barcode for those to continue to track that, making that entire chain of custody a reality and being able to, again, have that from start to finish. As we sort of push into the future and we support productions and everything within the Reveal platform, again, having a very similar capability here, automatically issuing production requests, creating production sets, having that unique barcode stamped on the production so you can, again, have that full chain of custody from start to finish. And just to wrap up here, before I turn it back over to Simon.
Alex, just one question, and I'll throw over to a slide, but
Sure.
A question from the audience, and I know that you're kind of part of the product team, etc. And I know we're kind of working at the moment, thinking
Sure.
about when this is scheduled to be released. Is this over the next kind of 3-4 months? Is that kind of where we're kind of thinking at the moment?
Yeah, the initial iteration of this automation that I'm referencing will be available within the next 3 to 4 months. That's correct.
Okay.
And all of this is underpinned, just to wrap up the demonstration here, by that project management component that I mentioned earlier. We have various different ways for you to manage the movement of all of this data, but from a leadership metric perspective, reporting back to your business, giving you the insights that you're looking for, I just want to end on this high note, which is all about dashboards. And we have various dashboards and insights into your overall projects. What are the top case types within your organization? If you're going to be doing things like legal holds or preservations, right? Who are the frequent flyer custodians? What are the top data sources? What's that look like from a timeline perspective? And this is my personal favorite, the process insights, right? The ability to get that visual flow of what's been collected, processed, excluded, deduped, and ultimately hosted into Reveal 11. And again, being able to also do that and see and represent visually who those custodians are, the top data sources. And when you're looking to get into those details, into the weeds, the micro view of the data, we've got you covered there as well. We include 20 plus reports out of the box. And like dashboards, these reports can be applied either globally across all of your projects or individually across your individual projects. And so with that, I will go ahead and stop sharing.
And then just one more slide for a minute or two, Alex, and then I'll do the wrap up.
That's right. And so just to kind of wrap up here, what did we just look at, right? Reveal Central is a difference maker, okay? not only with those API connectors that we talked about, over 40 different connectors, workflow automation is a big theme for our application throughout the life cycle. And of course, we'll be bringing that to market very soon for into reveal processing and review. That concept of that single pane of glass, again, being able to do your project management, preservations, collections, all the way and automating that into review from a single platform, not having to switch to different tools, not using separate modules, not RDPing into different machines, but through one single web application. And then most importantly, and this is a common pain point for many organizations, is, what do you do about your legacy tools or legacy applications that you may be using today? Well, the best part about the way we've developed the platform is it's extremely flexible. And so doing deployments and implementations, we have a great way to tackle and connect to not only enterprise data sources, but systems and legacy tools you may be using today, being able to take data from those databases and import them or sort of bring them over and have that legacy view continued within Reveal Central. And so with that, I will wrap that up and pass it back over to you, Simon. Thank you for the time.
One question, Alex. There's two questions. One
Sure.
question is around regarding acquisitions and collection of data from international sources. How do we contend with, for example, GDPR, if that data collected now exists in the Australian cloud repositories when it's collected from the EU?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we built Reveal Central, formerly Legal, one of the ground up things that we sort of set the ground rules for is to be able to sort of work around these various geographical issues. And so one of the really great things about the platform is that it can be deployed regionally and have sort of a master view that can be restricted by role-based access controls. So you can have data sources isolated in specific regions, those custodians, those employees, and have the practitioners or the technical folks or non-technical folks using that application and only restricted to that particular view in that region.
Excellent. And Chris, I know there was a question from yourself in terms of where we are with kind of the short messaging release. And I know there's a couple of other roadmap questions. As an outcome from this session, what I'd like to do is kind of answer that question more broadly, Chris, well, specifically and more broadly of where it fits into the overall roadmap. So I'll come back to the audience of, again, specifically kind of confirming where we are with Reveal Central, as Alex said, the next kind of 3 or 4 months, but also kind of where we are with some of the other roadmap items. So before I kind of wrap up, I know we've got a couple of minutes, is a big thanks to Alex, Enzo and Campbell for joining. As I kind of go for as part of my introduction, what I wanted to achieve out of today is get you to hear from one of your peers in the industry, being Campbell, of his experience to date, how he's doing things to date. Enzo to kind of share with you specifically around eDiscovery, litigation, and the improvements that we've made to the platform even since the last couple of months. And also from Alex's perspective, coming on from legal, is looking at what the acquisitions mean and how we're already integrating it. And I think the exciting pieces I touched on as part of my intro was the amount of work that we're doing and that we've done over the last 12 months globally and also in specifically for the APAC region. I think it's inspiring, and we're actually wanting to deliver for this market. So, and that wouldn't have been able to be possible without kind of the support from kind of the audience that's on the call today. So a big thank you. Just quickly as I wrap up, I want to touch on, in terms of the recent activity we've done, and a big call out to the ACEDS eDiscovery Leaders Live sessions that we do. This is open to everybody. Yep. So I know I've mentioned in all my sessions that in terms of who's doing them, anybody has an opportunity to kind of participate in these sessions. So if you're interested, please reach out to George or reach out to myself. We're actually going to be in the Legal Innovation at Tech Fest on Monday. So Monday and Tuesday, we're one of the major sponsors or the principal sponsors with one other. We're going to have George there, who's going to run podcasts while he's there at the show. So if you're at the show, your peers are at the show, you'd love to be involved, come along and be involved in the podcast. Enzo, Brian, a couple of others, myself will be at the stand as well. And what Alex has shared with you and Enzo has shared with you, we've got plenty of time to get deep dive into that. We've got Lawfest in New Zealand coming up on June the 1st. So those are coming over, we're going to be over there as the principal sponsor as well in Lawfest New Zealand. So I'm excited to be that. And I know there's a lot of people going over to Orlando and hopefully doing a bit of family vacation afterwards. I know there's a lot of people going over there in August. So for those that are planning it, August the 20th and 24th. And stay tuned for our next Revealing APAC quarterly chapter, planned for August. And more importantly, we're probably going to do it face-to-face, kind of around the country. So because we're kind of getting back to normality, that'd be great to do face-to-face. So with that, a big thank you again to all our panelists. It's kind of great and inspiring in terms of what we're delivering to globally, but also more importantly to the APAC region. And this wouldn't have been possible without the community being the audience that we have, and your involvement, your drive, and driving us to kind of deliver something better. So a big thank you to all of you. Look forward to speaking to you soon. And thanks again and have a great day. And thanks again, Campbell, for joining the Reveal team. Thanks again.